too fast or jazz, or maybe make it major instead of minor. I mean, these are all just kind of for laughs, but it gets you thinking about like what makes the music tick. It lets you kind of inject your own voice into it and things like that. And another thing I would do is just listening to more music outside of classical and try to figure out what they were doing. So that's kind of like transcription, just listening. What the heck is that? Okay, it's that chord. That takes a lot of time, but if you get better at that, it kind of trains your ear in a way that really helps you. Because a lot of improvisation is more just kind of using what you can hear and adapting and creating some new sounds. And it's a little more like that than something more rigorous in classical. And I just kind of kept at it. I mean, some of the exercises, like, I'm not gonna lie to you, like, it does help to be able to play a bunch of chord progressions and like all 12 keys, and there's some kind of drill-based things that aren't very exciting that will make you a better improviser, because if you're fluent in any key, then that just gives you more things that you can do. Over time I just kind of got more into it and tried to develop my own kind of exercises and influences. And now it's kind of fun. It's like anytime you listen to new music, it kind of gives you material, like, oh, okay, I could kind of use that. And I think when all of us play some kind of improvisation, we're always, in some sense, we're kind of channeling like all of the music we've ever heard in our life is kind of coming out in some sort of way. Maybe not all at once, of course, but influences are just kind of in your DNA. But anyway, I think maybe I'm rambling too much, and it's already time to start.
That was a very good introduction. I'm supposed to do the
introduction. Go ahead.
Your introduction is all very fun. So I'm Jerry from the Amateurpianists. I'm one of the board members, and we share the responsibility of hosting these things. So I'm technically the host, even though Aaron's going to do all the work. We have a donation box back there. We are a nonprofit organization, and we rely on donations in order to pay bills, and we don't have salaried anybody. So anything that you might think of, there's also a QR code, I think, on your programs. That's number one. So please, if you're inclined to donate, please go ahead. We have programs, and we also have these exercise lists that Aaron has provided. And they're over on that table over there. So if you didn't get them, you can raise your hand. I can bring you one. That's number two. I think there are restrooms right out here. That's an easy one. A little bit about Aaron. I got to meet Aaron a couple of years ago now, and I came to an amateur pianist recital. How many people in the room have been to an amateur recital where Aaron improvised, and you've heard Aaron improvise? 1, 2, 3. Maybe we can talk him into doing a little improvising for us today. So I came in, did not know him, didn't know anything, and people were playing Chopin, and then somebody else is playing Mozart, and somebody else is playing Bach, and then it's going down, and then it's Aaron Demby Jones improvisation. And I thought, I didn't know it. I'm thinking, really? After that, he's gonna, who's this guy? Who's this guy? Like, what is this gonna be, And it turned out it was really, really very, very good, very interesting, thoughtful music. And so I said, wow, this is the real deal. When I was putting the donation box together, it's a little complicated. Every single time I put it together, I have to think like 3 times. Like, how am I going to put this thing together? And then I thought, I have a mathematician, music major, who then got a PhD in media and technology right at my disposal to help me with this box. If I can't put the box together.
I would just improvise,
That's probably what would happen. He would just improvise. So I will get out of the way. I think you're really going to enjoy this today, and hopefully there'll be a little time for questions and answers.
Yeah,
I've got a couple of questions of my own for Aaron.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, of course, to Amateurpianists for letting us use this opportunity. So welcome everyone. We'll jump into the exercises pretty soon. I just wanted to kind of start with a quick little intro about improvisation. I guess you already got the longer spiel. In terms of this workshop, one of the goals I have is kind of making improvisation seem maybe a little less scary, a little more approachable. So I wanted to point out that, maybe not in music, but in other areas of our lives, like all of us use improvisation pretty often. Like if you've ever had a conversation with another human being, as long as it isn't scripted, you're improvising. You don't really know what you're going to say. You just say what's on your mind. maybe if you play sports, you don't exactly know what your body's going to do in advance, but you can still catch a ball or hit a shot in tennis. There are plenty of examples in our lives, and so the most important message is that you can already do this. Maybe not immediately with music, but like improvisation is pretty fundamental. I think what scares us about music, or especially maybe the piano, is it's a pretty blank page problem. You look at this instrument, it's just a sea of notes, 88 keys. Like, what am I going to do with that? Which notes am I going to play? When am I going to play them? It's pretty scary, right? Yeah. So maybe before we start, I think I'd like to encourage you to think about it a little differently. So I think we often get fixated on the notes because that's what you can see. Like, okay, note, note, note. But when you're playing music, like, there's other elements of music that aren't just note-based, right? So I don't know, maybe if you guys can call out what are some elements of music that aren't just like notes.
Rhythm.
Yeah, how about rhythm, right? Rhythm is super important, maybe even more important than the notes. Articulation, yeah, how you shape the note. Is it a or is it a right? It's a big one. Rhythm, you got articulation. Phrasing, yeah, how you shape a whole line. You connect the notes together. Great one, yeah. There are many others. There's dynamics, that's kind of an obvious one, but it makes a big difference, right? Loud or soft. Articulation, like you said, can kind of, using the pedal can kind of smear things together. That's kind of an interesting one on the piano. Not the specific note, but like the register, like really high, really low, that kind of gives different kind of a color maybe. And so each one of these is like a musical dimension. And so when you think about it that way, a lot of the time when we're improvising, what we're going to do is kind of play with maybe just one or two of these dimensions as kind of a constraint. That's one of the big takeaways from this workshop, is sort of playing around within some constraint. So maybe the constraint is we're only going to play nice short articulations. See what we can do with that. That gives you something to start with. Right now you're not just like 88 keys. You're like, okay, I'm going to play some short stuff. Or maybe you're going to play the same chord, but you're going to change the pedal. You're going to change the articulation. Maybe you're going to phrase it a certain way. That's going to be more minimalist kind of music, but it's interesting, and you're going to listen to it, and you're going to kind of play around and see what works. Great, so that's the theme of the exercises. I think we'll try to just jump into them. So there should have been a worksheet over there that is going to explain how the first exercise works. So we'll start with that. So unfortunately, full disclosure, we had volunteers who kind of pre-registered for this. And the hope was that the first exercise would be more kind of beginner level. Maybe you play some piano, but not a lot. You haven't done much improvisation. But unfortunately, those volunteers couldn't come today. So I'm going to have to improvise this part of the improvisation workshop. I don't want to put people on the spot, but if there's anyone who's willing to try this first exercise together with me, I'd love a volunteer. It's pretty approachable, should be fun, but no pressure. I want to give it a shot, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm getting into.
Let's do it. Okay. Thank you so much. And why don't you introduce yourself first, and then we'll get started with the exercise.
Oh, hi, I'm Carol Goldstein, and I started learning piano when I was 9.
Fantastic.
And I'm really interested in this. I didn't know I could compose, but I did once in the 70s. I wrote a couple pieces.
Okay.
Yeah, but I haven't done anything since.
Okay. Perfect. Well, thanks, Carol. So why don't you come on over, and we'll do this exercise together. So, folks, you can follow along on the worksheet. I'm just going to kind of explain the idea of this exercise. You're not going to need the worksheet. We'll just... So what we're going to do here, it's very much a listening-based exercise. And the constraint we're going to set up is essentially like a drone in the left hand. So we're just going to play one single note, or maybe an octave. Maybe you want to grab this octave C here with your left hand. we go. Yep. And you might want to use the pedal to hold it. Yep. And I want you to think of that as like a drone instrument. You know, maybe like a bagpipe or a
Sounds like
didgeridoo or sitar. Think of it as just kind of this nice, steady drone. And it's a piano, right? So you can't literally drone. The sound is gonna. Okay. So you're gonna have to use your listening and kind of re-engage from time to time to get that drone going.
Okay.
So you're gonna be droning with your left hand.
You want me to keep doing?
You're good for now, so,
Okay.
as long as that makes sense.
I got
And
it.
yeah, and then you're going to take your right hand and just use these 3 fingers, the first 3 fingers, thumb and second and third. And we're going to make a little shape with our fingers. I'm going to have you start it right here on the C. Yeah, that's the
Together?
shape. That's the shape, but you can play them in broken order. Yeah, that's good. Get used to that sound, get used to that feeling. You can play them in whatever order you want. You can create a little rhythm. You're doing that, like dum 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 dum. That's good. Yeah. And so the idea of the exercise now is you're going to kind of combine these. You're going to have the drone's going to be going.
On and off.
On and off. Whenever you think you need a little more drone, it's up to you. You're going to move. And the key part is that once you're ready, you're going to take your whole right hand and just move it so that the thumb is somewhere else, but keep the same shape, right? So, just move the whole hand. Sure. Yeah, you can move it anywhere.
I'm trying to think where it was.
Yeah. So I don't want you to be thinking at all. So what I'm going to tell you to do is close your eyes for this exercise. You're just going to listen. So you're moving it around according to octaves. So you're repeating it everywhere. I don't even care where you move it. Move it wherever you want. Yeah. How does that feel? Yeah.
Interesting.
Try a little more.
I wouldn't have done that before. Okay.
Try keeping your eyes closed. I think it'll really help. Just
Really?
just listen. It doesn't matter what notes you play.
Okay. But you want the same shape.
Same shape, but if they mess it up, it's okay. Great. You did a lot of really intuitive things. So you know, sometimes you played the notes at the same time, so it would be like da da da, and then right. That was just I didn't tell you to do that. You just came up with that. That was really nice. You re-engaged the drone sort of instinctively when you needed to. That was great. Yeah. So this is an interesting method in that you don't even know what you just played, right?
No.
You don't even know which notes you played.
I would have to be inspired, but I'm not inspired yet.
Right, yeah. So we can think about if you're okay with pushing it in some different directions. Another thing you can try is playing a different drone note.
Instead of the octave?
Instead of the C's, just play a totally different note. Just move it up to a D.
But it should be active?
Mm-hmm.
Sounds better.
You like that better? Okay, yeah. So it's going to change. I'm going to claim it's going to change everything, which is pretty surprising because you're kind of playing the same stuff in the right hand. But the way the sound goes against the bass really changes it. So just demonstrate that. I think it'll be interesting.
So I should do the same shape thing? Like
Yeah,
that?
just do the exact same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you really vibe with that one. Yeah. What do you guys think? Yeah. I think you did like that note better. You can
I
tell.
did.
You can tell.
I got
Yeah.
more
You
inspired
were really
by
into that. Yeah. So if you're
You know, I mean, that was really good. That was really nice. And it reminded me of a question that I was going to ask later, but I thought it would be a good time to ask now is, do you record yourself when you're improvising? And the reason I ask that is, even though I don't have the discipline to do that a lot of times myself, it's if you somehow come across a good idea that maybe you wouldn't have thought of, you can then go back and then harvest discuss. That, I would like to have a recording. In fact, I will have it. But I would like to have a recording of what you just, like it had shape, it had...
Yeah, give it up.
It's
really good.
And so anyway, I figured I'd ask you about recording yourself while you're doing this. At the beginning, you probably don't want to do that because you just want to improvise. But
Right, it's a pain in the neck, right? Because you just want to play, and now you've got cables and microphones and whatnot. So I wouldn't say I do it like regularly, but yes, I mean definitely. Sometimes I'll make it an intention, like okay, I'm just going to record something every day for a couple weeks, something like that. And even then, it's like. Even if you have a recording of it, then you have to do the arduous work of figuring out what the heck you just played. Like, I bet you wouldn't be able to repeat that exactly.
Not exactly, no.
Sometimes that's the beauty of improvisation, is that it's there for that moment. If you tried to do it again, it's emptier somehow.
When did you start improvising? When did you realize you could just make things up?
Yeah, I think I was sort of mentioning to the audience earlier, but kind of in my 20s or so is when I got more into it. So I guess it's been about 10 or 15 years now. One thing I'll say is sometimes when I'll get good ideas from an improvisation that's recorded, I'll be able to remember maybe not exactly what I did, but perhaps the constraint that led me there. So I'll bet you could do a similar improvisation right now if you wanted. Right, because okay, I was playing this D drone, and I was kind of moving this shape around, and obviously you can't replicate the exact notes, and maybe your emotion will change on a different day. It'll come out different, but in some sense it'll be the same-ish.
It helps to remember the beginning.
Beginning, yeah. So some of the pieces that I've composed are not sort of strictly written out the way Bach or Chopin or whatever is, but it's sort of okay, I kind of know what I'm doing for these first 8 bars, and then now I kind of know what I'm doing for this B section, and so that's at least my own kind of personal take on that.
But you do write some things down?
Yeah, sometimes.
It just takes a lot of time.
Yeah, right. It's painstaking. Even something relatively simple, you just perform, not to take anything away from it, but that would still be kind of annoying. Notate okay, what are the exact notes? What's the exact rhythm? One thing that I think helps you anchor yourself is that you found a steady rhythm. I don't know if it's been a few minutes, so maybe we forget what just happened. But you were playing kind of like a dun, you had kind of that, sort of it was more regular,
I didn't even realize.
and that seemed to flow better for you because the initial exercise is very loose. It's almost free from time. It's just like drone. There's no beat with the drone, right? It's just drone.
I see.
Right, so if you're into meditation and sort of more mindfulness kinds of sounds, you might like that, but if you're a different kind of energy, you might prefer a right?
I just think it's amazing. You told me to close my eyes, which I did, which I thought was really cool.
Not only did you come up with something cool, you weren't even looking. It's not really.
I had my eyes closed the whole time, which is amazing to me.
Yeah, so it seems like a party trick, but I promise you, it's actually it's kind of a common idea, right? People who are visually impaired maybe are more attentive to sound, right? If you block the visual field, it just kind of makes it easier to focus on the sound. And in this case, we don't want to be distracted by what our hands are doing because we don't even really care. We know where this drone is. You're not going to mess that up. You can't even really mess up the right hand because it's just playing a bunch of white notes. What could go wrong? So you just listen. And your listening, I think, created better shape. It created, these dynamics because you were listening so carefully.
And having a shape helped.
You did that all just from listening.
Yeah. Very good.
Great. yeah, I think there's some more directions on the worksheet if you have other ideas.
I had a sudden urge to meditate.
Yeah, it says on the worksheet, but yeah, so this is kind of very loosely based on some Indian classical tradition of like a raga where you have a drone and then they very slowly introduce the notes of the raga. And obviously it's not exactly the same thing, and I'm not a big expert on Indian classical music, but just thought that was kind of an interesting parallel. And, a lot of music around the world is more improvised than this kind of Western classical tradition, so part of that tradition is essentially just to kind of improvise within that framework. And actually the classical tradition in Europe also had a lot of improvisation, but that's another rabbit hole for another day, so we won't go there. Let's move on to the next exercise. So I think we have, I know Rick is here. Is Abigail here? Come on up. And you guys can maybe introduce yourself and your experience and everything before we get started. Want to start, Abigail?
I'm Abby McKay. I started playing piano when I was pretty young and just mostly did classical stuff. Kind of had a similar experience where I wanted to be able to go up to a piano and just play something. So
Okay. Sorry, was it Abby or Abigail?
Abby.
Abby, okay, sorry. Abby then. And you want to...
I'm Rick. I took lessons when I was a kid from about probably 8 to 15 or 16, and then I took a 4-year break, and then I picked it up again about 5 years ago. I've been taking lessons since that time, and a lot of practice time, and I started taking jazz lessons as well as the regular piano lessons 2 years ago, and I've been doing that for a bit, and that's been a real eye-opener for any of you that have been trained more classically, just read music. It's a different ballgame, and it's complex. It's not simple. It's not something you can turn over easily. Some people are smarter than others and pick it up faster than others, but it's an interesting journey. I'll say that for it. Learning how to read, lead sheets and recognizing chords that are written above with just a straight A melody line and playing from that, and then learning to improvise off of that, and then your teachers are pointing out the great jazz pianists, and you're listening to the complexity of what they're playing and trying to get that through your head. But it's kind of fascinating, and particularly those that have only been classically trained and kind of turning that around a little bit. But it's useful for that. I was just citing the other day, I was playing a Moonlight in Vermont is a jazz standard, and so I had it written out, and I could play it fairly well written out. But then it's like, well, it's, and when you take up jazz, one of the first things they teach you is a swing melody. So instead of 8 notes being, dun, 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 it's like dun, da, dun, da, dun, da, dun, like that. And if I applied swing to that same thing, it was like so much better. And anyway, so there's little things here and there that have been really, really interesting. So I'd urge any of you that are interested in taking a journey to look for a jazz teacher. And it's a journey. So sorry.
No, appreciate it. Yeah, and it would be impossible to talk about improvisation without giving a nod to jazz. I mean, that's probably the most famous improvisational genre that's connected to piano, and a lot of people kind of think of them as one and the same. So glad we've got sort of a jazz person as one of our volunteers. So yeah, I think we'll jump right into this one. The goal is going to be to kind of tinker with a very famous melody from Bach. So we're going to be messing around with Bach's C major prelude. It's going to be fun. You're going to have to be willing to, play it wrong. So, if you're a little bit worried about playing Bach wrong, I absolve you. So just so everyone knows what we're talking about, is one of you willing to play maybe like the first 10 or so bars of this, just so everyone's on the same page? Doesn't
Go
matter.
ahead, or I'll do it either way. No big deal.
Great, so C major prelude. This piano has kind of a heavy action, just as a warning. Yeah, everyone knows that one probably, right? All right, that's the original. Great, now we're going to throw it out. We're going to do different things. So actually, since you're sitting down, Abby, what I'd like you to do, this is a fairly simple kind of a change, but you played it with, sort of, what I would imagine is sort of, beautiful phrasing, the right kind of articulation, all the right paddling. If you had an excellent sense of how a quote should be played. I want you to just change the articulation somewhere that seems kind of maybe wrong. Like maybe just bring out, it doesn't have to be exactly this, but just a or maybe you want to go. Just do something that's like kind of wrong with the articulation. It doesn't have to be anything in particular, but just to get you to do something a little random. Okay, yeah. Let's try to make something like really dramatically wrong now. That's a good start. I just wanted to, get us doing that. So maybe just really hammer that top out of each one. And just be consistent throughout it. Is that okay? A little more. Even more. All I want to hear is that top note. Yeah, that's good. I can go even more, but yeah, so it's funny. Like, it obviously changes the character of it. Bach's original is kind of flowy. Maybe it could be played by a guitar or a lute. And now we're just like, right? It's kind of silly. Why don't we get Rick in here? We're going to kind of swap in and out of making little changes. So you mentioned swing, Rick. I want you to swing it.
I got you.
Good, yeah. I feel that swing, yeah. Yeah, great. Let's try something a little trickier. So this piece is in 4 or in 2, let's try to play it in 3. So I'll show you what I mean,
Okay.
because that might sound a little weird. So how do you play something in 3? The most standard one is some kind of waltz, 1, 2, 3, waltz, 2, 3. So how are we going to do that? So we want to get this high note on beat 2. So maybe we want to do something like. See what I'm doing there? It's the same shape, And the notes don't matter too much. Just get that 3 feel. I want you to feel like you're waltz. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see if it happens. So.
Yeah. You're gonna have to change. You're gonna have to change it pretty dramatically. So
Yeah.
just have your hands in the same shape, but just try to play a waltz kind of. Like, it doesn't have to be the exact sequence of notes. Yeah, so that's still in 4, but that was a little different. You have like a march. I would say. That's fine too. Yeah, I liked that. So that was sort of like. You told us swing was kind of like do ba do ba do ba do. If you do a really extreme version of that, it's like shum cha-chum cha-chum cha-chum, right? Sort of a double dotted. That's like a French overture kind of a sound. So that was cool too. Here, let me help you out. Just play it like that. So just ignore those 2 notes. Does that make sense? Try one more time. Yeah. That was kind of hard, but yeah, I like what you're doing with the rhythms. Let's try. You want to try one? Oh, sorry.
Right. Well, I was going to say, it's really hard wrapping my mind into a 6/8 rhythm with all those 16 notes.
Yeah, you have to kind of ignore what's on the page, which, yeah, is a little tricky
Right.
for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, let's bring Abby back. Let's try, you want to try like a 6/8 do? I'll show you a little bit what I mean. So that's more like a jig, kind of like, and then you sort of like, all you really have to feel is the 1, 2. Think you can do that? That's great. I love it. Love it. Do it again, but confident. I want to hear that loud. Continue a little jig to that. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So what are we learning here? Like, we're keeping kind of the same notes. We're playing around with rhythm. We're playing around with feel. We're improvising. It's not the same kind of like improvising from scratch. But it's kind of cool. It gives you a sense of what makes Bach good. Maybe you didn't like some of that stuff, and that's okay. I mean, it's not their fault. I told them to do it, right? I told them make this thing in 3 or make it a jig or play this weird articulation, and you're like, no, I just want to hear this. Right? So sometimes you can learn like, oh, Bach did it this way for a reason. Like, okay, maybe it doesn't sound so great if you turn it into a jig. Although that sounds pretty cool to me, I think. Yeah, so we can play with rhythm, we can play with articulation. You can do weirder things if you want to try some kind of fancier rhythms. You could do, if you think about it, every single pattern is 2 notes, 3 notes, and then another, you just repeat the same 3 notes. So it's like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 2 plus 6 is 8, so it's a group of 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that's the whole piece. If you want to be a little more modern, you could just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why repeat yourself? So. So we're doing it in 5. Like, that's kind of random. Try that if you want. Yeah, it's fun. Gives it a different character. It's cool. Yeah, of course you can keep going, but yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can do it at like 7. I won't make you do that unless you really want to. But yeah, the point is you can really experiment with these things. Clearly, Bach was experimenting with his own little constraint. If you think about how this piece is composed, it's literally the same kind of constraint over and over, and he's really playing more with harmony than anything else. Like the rhythm is pretty much unchanged throughout. We didn't touch harmony because that's a little harder to improvise with, but that is a fun exercise, so if you're up for it, either of you, what I would say is another version of this exercise is maybe play the same first 4 bars the way it's written, and then just like start changing one note. Just ignore the rest of it. I'll show you what I mean. So maybe it's sort of. Everything's normal. No, I don't know, maybe. I'm just changing like one note at a time. That was a little weird. Maybe I'll change this one. Okay. good as Bach, but it's interesting. Right? You're really just changing one note at a time, kind of experimentally, if you're up for it.
I'm gonna try something different.
It can be closer to Bach. I was just, making stuff up.
As typical, I go way too fast.
No, that's good. You pointed out something that I forgot to even mention. So notice how he started
Yeah.
way down there. It's cool because Bach is playing this, right? It sounds kind of like one instrument. Perhaps it's almost just like a little lyre. And you start out like boom, boom, boom. There's like a walking bass all of a sudden, and then now it sounds like two instruments. So a lot of improvisation is kind of, you treat the piano not really as one instrument, but a family of different instruments that you can kind of control. So laying down something in the bass, you're like, all right, I can lay down some bass if you want to just, silly, but it's kind of cool. Right? You want to give it a shot with that? Instead of changing one note, or you changed the note. That was good. You don't have to read it at all. You just change one note from your previous shape. If that makes sense. Because it's going to be way harder if you're trying to
Yeah.
sort of look at that and then compare it. Like just play a shape and then move one of your notes and then move one of your. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that'll, I think, make it easier. It's good. It's really good. Yeah. Right?
I was reminded, listening to both our fine pianists do this morris thing, there's really, at least in my mind, and maybe you could speak about this, there's no such thing as wrong.
Yeah, that was the main feedback I was going to give you.
Like you can do something that you didn't mean to do, and there's that expression that if you do it once, okay, if you do it twice, then you meant it.
Yeah.
If you do it 3 times, then it's performance practice.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so Abby had some beautiful chords, and I could tell it just from your own reaction that occasionally you felt like, oh, maybe I made a mistake, or you kind of hesitated, right? In this kind of music, the worst thing you can do is hesitate because the entire music is a flow. So even if you play what you think is a wrong note, to Jerry's point, just play it again, and then find out why your ear thinks it's wrong. Maybe it's not even so bad. But if your ear thinks it's wrong, your ear wants it to do something else. So, maybe you're here, I don't know. I guess it's fine. Okay, that's not great. I'm not gonna stop. Why does it sound bad? I don't know. It still kind of sounds bad. I don't know. Okay, there we go. Is just to not stop. And
Are you thinking chords and keys at all when you're doing this?
I mean, when I'm doing that exercise, I'm trying to really practice what I preach there. So I have a shape. I'm literally moving one of those 4 notes, usually by a small amount, maybe a half step, so I'm a black key to a white key, and then I'm just listening. It's easier to hear if it's like an outer voice, so if you're, as in like, if it's here. I'm probably more likely to change. So I can change the one. Now I'll change one in the middle. I'm just changing them, and there's nothing super fancy about that. Of course, I can think about what those chords are, like it was a C major, a C minor, like a C9, like if you want, you can think that way, but you don't really have to. When you're doing it this way that I'm describing, or you're just changing one voice at a time, it has a lot of benefits. Like you get sort of smooth voice leading, meaning like the shapes are close to another and sound pleasant, as opposed to like when you see a beginner learn chords, they often, I mean, no offense to beginners, but they'll be like, chord and then like, and then chord. Like they're moving all over the place. They're not playing them with the proper arrangement of voices. Exactly, yeah. But yeah, the point being, you can kind of do this in an improvisatory way and just let your ear guide you. Like, okay, I kind of like that sound. I'm going to keep moving it that way. Or I didn't like that one, but I'll keep playing it and figure it out.
So you're keeping intervals by keeping the shape of your hand, you're keeping the same intervals as you move.
Right, yeah, exactly. The shapes are maybe moving by little amounts. If you're just, you're literally using the outer voices, maybe it's like your pinky in your right hand is just moving up by a half step or moving up by a whole step. You don't have to do it that way, but I think that's a good way to start. It's just kind of these little snaky movements. They're rarely going to sound terrible, which is nice for improvisation. Often they'll sound kind of nice. When you're more advanced, of course, feel free to move more than one voice at a time. You don't have to only move one, but that was just kind of a way to get started with the exercise. And then, obviously you don't have to use Bach. You can take any piece at all and kind of do this same sort of exercise with, we could use more Bach just because I have a book of Bach in front of me, right? And a lot of Bach is based on pattern play, like you guys probably know this. Right, that's sort of a common pattern. You could mess with that, I don't know. Who knows? You could change it to major. Might be interesting. You can do this with any piece at all, but it helps to do one that's kind of more patterny. So I do recommend. Bach has some pretty good ones. There's sort of Chopin preludes. Obviously, it's easier with I'm not going to call these pieces simple because they're beautiful pieces and complex in their own right, but sort of simple in a certain sense, like simple in they're not super difficult to get under your hands. Otherwise, nobody's going to want to do these kinds of exercises with Rachmaninoff or something. It's very difficult.
What was the name of the other one what you were playing? Just for C minor.
The one with the actual exercise that we did?
The Bach that she was playing.
This one that we played is Bach Prelude in C major.
Prelude in C major.
Prelude in C major. And then the one I just played for a couple seconds is the Prelude in C minor.
Isn't it a little easier? I mean, as long as you're in the key of C and you got all white keys.
Yeah.
I think it's a little easier just to, the keys are equal distance and all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
You start getting out of C and start out.
Agreed, yeah. I didn't do it today, but another good exercise is just try to play this in a different key, so I'll play it in F. That's a good exercise in just understanding chords. But that's more of like a drill. I didn't want to do that today with you guys because that's just kind of takes a lot of practice. But yeah, transposing pieces, tough, but a good thing to do.
I think it's really good, especially some of my piano students, they hate the minor key. They hate the pieces in the minor, so I'm going to tell them, okay, transpose it.
Yeah, playing this in minor is going to be weird, but you could. Something. So basically, it's like it's like having little games. It's exploratory. You can't really do it wrong. Nothing you guys did was wrong. That's an important message.
Is there a limit where, I'm going to reuse your word, but it can be wrong, or you can do whatever you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the jazz, there's various jazz quotes of like, there are no wrong notes, maybe just sort of slightly better choices. I think Miles Davis put it like, it's not sort of the note that you play that's wrong, but how you follow it up. So, meaning, if you're in a certain sticky moment, there should be a way out of it. Of course, if you fail to find it, then like sort of retroactively, sure, maybe you kind of played a wrong note. I don't want to be too kumbaya about it, like some things are going to sound worse than others. Yeah, that's part of it is like, you know, using your ears as like, okay, why do I think this is wrong? Is it so wrong? Is there some way I can kind of adjust to get out of it? Is really good practice.
Do you think of a key before you play? Before you improvise, you think, oh, I want to play an A major, or you know what I mean? Or do you just start?
It depends. I mean, usually I'll start, as a place of starting, you have some chord or some, you know, sort of some implied key. But it's not always obvious what the key is, you know, if it's some kind of, you know, there's some more ambiguous things if you're like, some kind of, sorry, that was maybe a really technical answer, but yeah, I mean, usually have some idea, I think. I think we're probably done with this exercise, but thanks so much, guys. And then lastly, we have Alan and Alex. So maybe you guys can introduce yourselves to the audience.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm Alex, and I've been playing piano since I was 17, and I only took about like a year's worth of lessons when I was younger, around 7. But since 17, I was looking at the piano and I was thinking, how can I play this instrument? This was before I learned any theory or even how to play. And initially, when I thought about freestyling or improvising, I only knew just the white keys. So I only started with the white keys because I didn't know how to incorporate the black keys at all, or how they would even sound. And intuitively, I just started playing around. And as I've been playing for 17 years, I've just been kind of building upon that curiosity of how do I play this instrument without particularly any constraints, yet paradoxically there's always constraints that you built in order to evoke a certain sound. And that's when you learn more theory, and then when you learn more theory you can incorporate the black keys and kind of formulate certain sounds. And as you learn pieces by other composers, you also kind of see what type of sound, for example, like a waltz, how to do that, or a 4/4 and stuff like that. But basically, my improvisation curiosity started with that. Just how can I play this instrument without the constraints of notes, and kind of like Aaron mentioned, you know, if you come up to the piano and you have no memory, you don't know anything. How can you make a sound that sounds pleasing to you, and hopefully to the listener as well?
Yeah, thanks. And Alan?
Very nice. Hi, my name is Alan Abustey. I'm a professional violinist and violist in classical music, but I play an awful lot of piano, and I'm semi-retired, so I just practice the piano until the cows come home. And I began being a musician in the first grade. You know how you, like, the kids are doing puzzles, you know, those great big pieces of puzzles, and all of my friends or my colleagues in class, I just was constantly humming very quiet. I just had music going on in my head all the time. So the teacher would come around, like the class, and there would just be this like breezy little music coming out of me, and all my classmates, that's just Alan, you know. And so, so when I was 6, they gave me piano lessons, which was like in first grade. And then I picked up the violin when I was 13. But up until that time, I was a boy soprano and an actor, and I was just very outgoing, and I still am, and I apologize for that. But anyway, but one thing that I've done that has to do something with improvisation is that one of the latest things that I've been doing is like all my classical pieces. Basically, a teacher that is the head of the department at Oberlin, I played for him a couple times, and he said, well, Ashkenazi, because he actually studied with Ashkenazi.
Wow.
I know. How did he get in? But I don't know. It's just like studying with Horowitz. I mean, how did, like, they're like, you can count them on one hand. But anyway, the idea is, he said Ashkenazi looks at a piece of music, and he just kind of course, he's a brainiac, obviously, but he basically categorizes everything in terms of the chords that are behind it. So everything's either a scale or an arpeggio or bits of those, and where do they apply? And so I now, because I'm trying to do more, advanced playing and intermediate and advanced classical pieces, so one of the things that I do is I pick 3, if you don't mind, I pick basically 3 scales every day. So and if you use the whole tone system, basically I get like a major third, C, I'll do C major, I'll do E major, I'll do A flat major. And basically every single day I'm doing a heavy flat key, a heavy flat key, A flat, a heavy sharp key, E, for example, and then an intermediate key that's not all white or close to it, like. And every day I do I go up by half. But the idea is that every single day I do, and I do 16 or 18 different arpeggios in a row, and all I do for the most part is I change one note, and then I play about a whole bunch of different chords in the process, and a lot of what I do is whole tone stuff, and so that I'm basically I'm just trying to expand my ears so that I don't have so many rules, Anyway.
That's great, yeah.
But anyway, so I'm an enthusiast.
Thanks, Alan.
Safe to say.
So I think we're going to kind of alternate like the previous exercise. This one is a little bit more freestyle. So what I have here, it's going to be hard to show the audience, but it's essentially a little app that I've been working on where it lets you choose little improvisation constraints that help you have an idea of where to start from. So for example, let's just grab one. So here's a constraint I grabbed. It gives you a suggested mood. So the mood is like hopeful. Puts you in a certain mindset while you play. So a hopeful kind of a mood. And then the other constraint that it gives you is a more like a technical constraint rather than a mood. So this one says 2 parts, so you're playing only 2 notes at a time, like sort of 2 lines. So what I was hoping is we would just kind of go through some of these, let you guys try them out, and we'll chat a little bit beforehand rather than just throwing you to the wolves, so you can kind of be like, how would I strategize to play something that's hopeful and in 2 parts? And it sounds like Alan is volunteering Alex to start. So I don't know if that one sounds okay, or we can re-roll if you.
Let's do a re-roll.
Yeah. So you want to? I can share my own thoughts, but I'll let you think first. Alex, do you have any ideas about what that tells you about how you're going to approach this to be hopeful and using a 2-part?
Okay, so which mood am I playing?
Hopeful.
Hopeful. Probably just something light in a major key. Thinking D major.
Okay. D major, you said.
Yeah. And yeah, just kind of listening for that kind of uplifting type of sound.
Great. And a 2-part, I think, kind of explains itself in terms of the, probably left hand and right hand are doing.
Yeah, like a 2-part invention Bach.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be that counterpointy, but if you can do that, go for it. Yeah.
No, that'll be pretty hard.
That would be difficult. Yeah.
But, okay, so I'm doing hopeful, something with
Hopeful 2 parts of Alex's thought process is, just kind of D major-y, try to really listen, let's give it a whirl. We're going to do these kind of shorts, maybe 30 seconds, 1 minute, something like that. Okay, almost 1 minute exactly. Well done. Things. I mean, obviously it's hard to postmortem because we only just kind of heard it, but yeah, I mean, he was using the soft pedal a lot. I think that changes the. If you're not familiar, on a grand piano especially. It not only makes the notes quieter, but it actually, if you look inside the piano, there's usually 3 strings. You can see it. Any individual note is actually hitting 3 strings, which are all tuned to the same, so it's like it's like 3 people singing in a chorus, kind of. And when you press that pedal, it moves the hammer, so it actually only touches 1 of the 3 strings. So it's sort of a thinner sound. It's like only 1 voice rather than 3. So not only is it quieter, but it gives it like this more shimmery character, which I think really helped with the vocal vibe. You were also kind of playing in the upper register, which for me really helped.
And I was thinking of like upward direction.
Literally going up,
yeah.
The D major was effective. Toward the back half, it felt to me like you kind of maybe had some other emotions that were coming out, to be honest. It got a little stormy.
You know, when you're pressing keys on the fly, sometimes you get into a different sound that you don't even expect.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, okay, I'm in the sound, but then how do I bring it back to that original hopeful sound?
Yeah. I think that's beautiful because, you know, you have to kind of go where the sound takes you.
Yeah, or where you even find yourself with the sound.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So even if I tell you play hopeful, you know, you might find yourself a
In
little
B minor.
stormy, and it's like, oh, am I hopeful? I mean, oh, okay, yeah. That was kind of nice. Sorry, did you have
I got the hopeful, it was really nice, but I didn't quite understand about the 2 notes or something.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Like,
I didn't really go with the
kind of
two
ignored
notes.
that directive, but yeah, that's okay.
But he didn't ignore it, I'm trying to understand.
Oh, sure. You want to give it a shot?
Sure.
Two-part emotion.
We can also roll a different one, but I thought it would be kind of interesting to have two different takes.
Yeah, well, one of the things that about hopeful is that the line, whatever it is, it goes up mostly, but it's just also a thought. So sometimes it goes down because it's not just one thing.
Yeah.
So two voices.
pretty different takes. That was interesting to hear. Yeah. Does that help with the two voices at all? I think Alan did a,
But at the end, I split into three. You heard that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was some, liberties. Of course, these constraints are not laws of any kind. But yeah, Alan had kind of a steady left hand. Maybe if you're thinking of that as sort of a bass or some kind of slower instrument, and then most of the work was happening in the other voice.
Yeah, in the hopeful area.
The hopeful area, yeah. Yeah, and you have kind of an interesting, more chromatic take on hopeful, I would say. You kind of play a little shape and then move it up.
Yeah.
Step.
Yeah, I tried to have motivic consistency.
Yeah, exactly.
I took an idea.
So you have like do-do-do, and then you do it again, do-do-do. It's similar to the very first exercise where we had this one shape and we're moving it around.
So what's going on in your head when you're doing that? Are you thinking, are you hearing it in your head before you play it, or are you thinking along the lines of,
I see. What was most important for me was to get the shape of the little thing. I didn't know what I was going to play before I played it, so I had to think of something kind of rising figure, and I didn't want it to be all consecutive, ya da 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 da. So I went ya da da. I went 2, 3 together, and then I skipped one, and then I played like a half step or something like that. So I had a shape. I had 3, sort of consecutive notes, a skip note, and then 2 little notes, and then I put that different places. And then as I played the left hand, I listened. I was almost random. I didn't want to know what the left hand was doing relative to it, but then I wanted it to become a tonality, and so I listened to the harmonies implied, and I tried to make it get more tonal and more understandable. I mean, in the 45 seconds I had.
Yeah, one thing I noticed from both players, which was interesting, is they both kind of, as far as I could tell, played with a fairly free meter. In other words, like it wasn't an obvious, a waltz or a march. It was kind of free flowing. If you were notating it, it would be hard to know like where the bar lines went. And that's kind of interesting, because maybe to them this hopefulness is more, it's more abstract kind of. Doesn't necessarily line up with some kind of a thing. And also, to be fair, it's actually, I do this too all the time. It's kind of an improvisational crutch. It's much easier to improvise in a free-floating rhythm, because if you get a little stuck, you can just kind of hang out a little bit. Whereas if you're in a march, you can't do that. You gotta keep your foot on the gas. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. Maybe we'll do another one, and I'll force them to do something more rhythmic, just as a fun challenge. So how about we do, we got waltz, so kind of a waltzy 3/4 feel, and then the mood I have is just whatever you're feeling right now. Whatever, doesn't have to be anything particular. Does that sound good? Want to give it a shot? So let's start again if you have some ideas before you just dive into it. So again, we're doing a waltz and then sort of a personal mood, sort of whatever your current mood is. Oh, yeah. What's up?
I think the interesting thing about constraints is you set a constraint for yourself, but as you're going along, you often break these constraints in order to discover new things. And for example, in the case of a waltz, I can take that as the constraint, but as I'm going along, I'm sometimes breaking that purposely or not purposely. And sometimes you discover things that are intentional or unintentional. And usually if you discover something interesting, you tend to come back to it. And if it's not interesting or pleasing, you would discard it. And as you're going through this process, you're just kind of, setting the lines for yourself, but then you're also going outside the lines and then back in, outside the lines and back in. And as you're doing that process, you discover many different things. So I'll try to stick to a waltz. As I plan. And like Aaron said, I think with the rhythms, it's probably one of the more difficult constraints to adhere to. It's much more easier to play in a free flow type of dynamic.
Very much a waltz. Got the classic, I mean, the characteristic. That's like the most important thing, I would say, for a waltz.
Yeah, and I think as I'm playing, I'm trying to keep to that 1, 2, 3.
Right.
But then sometimes it's like the rhythm just expands or contracts, and you just kind of go with the flow and whatever you find yourself in, and then bring it back to that constraint of the waltz.
Yeah, it had a kind of Chopin-esque feel to it, I felt.
Yeah, that's
so
like-
you have this like, you get some kind of wistful right hand. Right. I think you did some stuff like that.
No, and it's an interesting point, because when you're improvising, you often refer back to the pieces that you love yourself, the composers that you really enjoy. So it's a lot of things like Chopin. I love Chopin, so it's like a lot of the same sounds. They just infuse themselves as you go along.
Yeah, and Picasso's quote about artists stealing, and Chopin accidentally stole from Beethoven and then published the Fantasy Impromptu. There's countless examples of composers stealing or copying ideas from each other. So certainly when you're improvising, if anything, it's more of like a little homage. I mean, there's a famous story, I think, of like Stravinsky being quoted like Rite of Spring in the middle of some jazz set in like the 30s and things like that. So great stuff. Do you want to give the same exercise a shot? Waltz, and the mood was just kind of whatever you're feeling.
Okay.
Personal mood.
Okay.
know how he's feeling, huh?
What did I have for breakfast?
I think you're a natural the waltz was like.
Sounds like a Prokofiev, grasshopper.
Prokofiev, yeah. Yeah, Alan demonstrated something really important, which is the notes matter almost way less than you think. Like, what makes a waltz? I don't know. There's like a low note, a boom boom, and then another low note. Maybe it's like it's recognizably a waltz, and I'm just banging things, right? Not to say that you were just banging things, but that's kind of the point. You play the instrument like I would say it was very percussive, right? You're treating the instrument more in a drum kind of a way, and a waltz feels
They have
better.
a summer festival. It's called Bang on a Can.
Bang on a can, yeah.
I've never gone there, but I imagine it's almost better I don't go. I just imagine what it's all about.
Yeah. And you know, sometimes in your head, maybe you have some idea, like, I'm going to sing something that probably you wouldn't be able to transcribe, because first, I'm not a good singer, and second of all, it's not really notes, but it'll be like, you know, like, I don't know what the notes are, but you can just kind of approximate. That's roughly what you were doing, I think.
So,
Right, you know, it kind of works.
I think I speak for everyone if I don't know what kind of time you have or what your form is, but it would be so nice to have an original Aaron improvisation. Like if you could play something and improvise for us for 3 to 4 minutes or something.
Sure, yeah.
Just go for it.
I was planning one more exercise with the two of you, maybe doing like a little forehand thing.
Yeah, we can
that
do
would
that.
be fun.
Yeah,
we're kind of at time, so I was planning to wrap up with that, but I'm happy to stick around afterward and do a little improv myself if people want to hear that. But I think, we should get you guys one more chance. I think a forehand piano would be a lot of fun.
Sure.
Does that sound good? Okay. I can grab another random thing, or if you guys want to agree on
Something new.
Something new. All right. How about we got somber? You want to be on the low?
No, you could be on the high.
I got somber, and then this one's a little technical. It's a stacked interval, so like stacking fourths or stacking things like that. So that's just like a consistent shape of like the gap between the notes is the same.
I don't want to know. You do your thing.
So they're going to try to improvise together. That uses a lot of different skills than improvising on your own, because you got to be like listening to the other person and reacting.
Like key area.
Yeah, do whatever.
He's saying do whatever. So their strategy is to just go for it. Let's see what they come up with. So again, it's a somber mood and just kind of more technical stacked intervals, which creates a certain kind of a chord.
You do the stacking, I'll do the song.
Yes, sir.
All right, divide and conquer. give it up for Alex, Alan, all of our participants. Abby,
Host's discretion. I agree, Alan mentioned, we'd love to hear you improvise on something.
Sure.
I just mentioned something to you, and one thing we haven't talked so much about is how to improvise on a theme.
Okay.
And I've heard you do this, and I know that you can do a beautiful job. You do not know what theme this is going to be.
Okay.
But I'd like to propose a theme.
Okay.
And it's the theme, it's the main subject of the fugue that follows that C major prelude that you folks were working on.
Okay. Oh, the C major, sorry.
Okay, got it? I'm sure you got it.
Yeah, I mean, I know.
I mean, you don't have to do all that
Gosh,
stuff.
I don't know. This sounds like a minefield. I have to like improvise something that's.
No. I know what you like. If you could use your app for this, I know what
Sure.
I know what can happen here. And I know I'm putting them on the spot. We did not plan this at all. I'm just. But watch this. This is good.
All right. Yeah. It's harder when you already kind of know some,
Yeah.
Bach fugue, but okay. I might change the theme a tiny bit if that's okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Improvise.
You can change anything you want, you can do whatever you want.
Okay. I guess I'm thinking just beforehand, like the theme is very Bach-y, so I'm probably gonna do my best to use some kind of quasi two-voicey Bach-like sounding thing, but it's gonna be difficult. But we'll see what happens.